Right, I'm going to make another video talking about potentially difficult subjects, but I'm in a pretty good mood, so it should be alright. But it's too hot. It's too hot to be making videos, it's too hot to be in here. But anyway, here we are. So, I suppose I'd try and pick up a little bit from where I left off last time, really, or sort of develop it a little bit more anyway for the people who are, who are interested in what I've been doing over all these years. So I suppose we'll jump straight back into it really from where I left off. The point I made at the end of the last Where Have I Been about, don't be surprised that I'm communicating with you and all that. I suppose the point I was really trying to make was I very much feel like, sort of coming from what we did as a band and then going to what I've been doing since was obviously, as you can imagine, a very difficult transition. And I think at the time I was desperate for things that would smooth that transition. Do you know what I mean? I was desperate. Well, I suppose I was looking for something, to feel a part of something. That's what was so good about the band. And, whatever about my own personality or whatever, it was good for me to feel part of something. I loved feeling part of something, which was one of the hardest things when the band ended, was missing that, missing feeling part of something like that. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of footballers. I'm sure that's a very difficult transition. And I suppose really, I think it's like a huge gap, I guess, in safeguarding, I suppose. I mean, when you hear the word safeguarding, obviously what you associate it with, but, a lot of, God, it's too hot for this hat, but my hair's too messy, you know what I mean, because of lockdown or whatever, but anyway. Oh no, I lost my point. Oh, it was a good point. Let's see if I can get it back. I don't know if I can get it back. That's typical of me, innit? Let's see, it should come to me in a minute. Can we hear the geese? Oh my God. Anyway, it's too hot. So, yeah, the transition, that's what we're talking about. The transition and the fact that, it must be similar for footballers being in that environment and just coming out of it. Do you know what I mean? It must cause so much damage that, and I think it's a big gap. And I think obviously more sort of nowadays more than ever, people are becoming more aware of mental health and the ramifications of stress and distress and feeling lost and all those sorts of things, and how seriously it actually plays a role in people's lives and how they operate on a day-to-day basis, really, I suppose. And so, I mean, it could be, I don't really have to look you in the eye and tell you, do I, sort of how hard it was. Being where we were and potentially taking it for granted, I guess, at times. Although that's probably not being fair on myself. But being where we were and then coming down from that, I could talk for a long time about the effects of that. And no one to hold your hand really in that scenario. That's the thing. When you're in the band and everything's working well, do you know what I mean? You've got teams of people and everyone's helping you, and you come out of that and all that's gone. I mean, that, that's a point in itself. Let's see if I can hold on to all this, but that was always a massively difficult thing. I mean, aside from my issues or anyone else's issues, to be on tour, doing what we were doing, living the life, and the nights we were having and the things we were doing in the cities we were doing it in, and then coming home was always really difficult trying to be normal, because this video is going to go all over the place. Anyway. Because I suppose you can get away, well, people will let you away with strange or bad behaviour if you're in a band. Do you know what I mean? I think it's probably one of the first places you could be where people will, well, you know what I'm trying to say. I think it was an issue for people like the Vines, really. This link's in my head. I don't know if it actually linked to what I just said because I can't remember. But anyway, you know, I think Craig, who is a lovely, lovely kid, a really lovely lad, a lot of good memories. That whole band, the Vines, really. And I'll talk about touring with them. I've got so many stories about touring with them. But my point is, I guess, that Craig's behaviour was, I'm not being funny again, but it was obvious that Craig had issues. Craig Nichols from the Vines. It was obvious that he did, and I don't think his issues were necessarily a priority for everyone who was making money. Do you know what I mean? Because it's publicity, isn't it? I suppose. And again, it comes back into what I was saying about the fact that in a position like that, you can pretty much get away with acting however you want, which again isn't big and isn't clever, but people indulge you, that's the word, isn't it? People are much more prepared to indulge you if you're in a band. Do you know what I mean? Indulge your behaviour. It's like, I can't remember where it's from now, but it's a line that always resonated with me. It's like, if you lose your mind or go mad, if you lose your mind without power, for example, you know, just, well, people who are on the fringes of society, or anyone in a position where people aren't willing to listen to them, I suppose. If you go mad without power, you get locked away. If you go mad with power, well, I suppose I could draw lots of comparisons that are sort of going on right now, but you know what I'm trying to say. Going mad when you've got power is dangerous, because people aren't always inclined to stop you, especially if you are at the heart of something that generates a lot of money for other people. You know, taking a case in point, the Vines. You know, Craig's behaviour needed addressing, and it has obviously since been addressed. I mean, again, I feel strange. I don't like talking about other people like that, do you know what I mean? But it's certainly how I saw it, and I'm pretty sure it's how a lot of people saw it. But people encouraged his behaviour. People encouraged his behaviour. So again, the point I'm making here is, when you are on tour, and even a relatively successful band like us, you can get away with things that you wouldn't normally get away with, and people won't call you out on. So again, the point I was making was, being in Tokyo on mad nights out every night, or being in wherever, just amazing places, and then coming home to Kipax and sitting down and watching EastEnders, or whatever, it just, something feels like it's missing. Something really feels like it's missing, and suddenly the world that you understood to be, well, appropriate, it no longer is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could go away for 2 months or whatever, or 2.5, 3 months, and behave a certain way, and then come home and that behaviour won't be acceptable. Do you know what I mean? But I wouldn't necessarily see that, because I was so wrapped up in the buzz of being on tour, and I don't know, not the power, but, well, the power, I don't know, I suppose. Is any of it real? Literally, is any of it real? I had that. Or is it all, I don't like swearing on here, but is it all, you know, bull? Do you know what I mean? Because when you're in it, and you're living it, and you're on the stage, it feels so real. But when you're not living it, and you're living a normal life, it seems like bull. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like, for a long time, I stood back reflecting on that and thinking,
it's not real. Do you know what I mean? It's not a sustainable existence for me. But whether that's just something that I told myself to make myself feel better about the fact that I wasn't still doing it, there is that possibility. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, I turned my back on it. And not just it, I mean, I turned my back on music. I couldn't even listen to music anymore because of what it made me feel. You know what I mean? I had to completely crush that side, squash it down. I couldn't listen to music, I couldn't listen to anything because, and that's always been my thing, whenever I listen to music, it sparks ideas off. And even hearing incidental music on somewhere, even on a TV program, you're like, oh, I like that. I can't like it because it makes me feel things that I don't want to feel right now. So I think I worked hard for a long time in my own head to convince myself that it is bull, do you know what I mean? The industry, being in a band, all that stuff. But maybe that just made me feel better about being me in that period of time. But I suppose the first 10 minutes of this video I've been trying to make a very long-winded point about the fact that coming out of the band, I suppose coming back down to earth, you know, it was like being abducted by aliens for however long it was. I always get this wrong, 12 years, 10 years, I don't know how long we were together, active, touring, I don't know. But it was like being abducted by aliens and then being dropped off after 12 years and then going, go on then, go live a normal life. We'll sit back and watch you while you try and do that. Laughing, do you know what I mean? That's kind of what it felt like. I mean, I'm not saying that anyone represents the aliens in a sense, but that's kind of what it felt like. It felt like being abducted by aliens and then being dropped back down to earth. I mean, look, again, I think a lot of people are still sat there thinking to themselves, why aren't this band still together? And we'll get, you know, we'll get to that. And we'll get to that in a very measured way, a very gradual way. Because I think you all deserve to know at this point. Well, don't get me wrong, you know, it's not some huge landmark event that happened that made it end. It was a gradual process, but again, I'm not going to talk about that too much now. So this video was originally intended to be where have I been and what have I been doing. Let's see if I can think about what I've been talking about. Yeah. No, it fits in fine because I've been talking about how to go from that to that. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so for me, it was all about filling my time. You know, it was all about filling my time and finding something to focus on, hyper-focus. I just need something to grab me. As long as I've got something to grab, I can deal with most things. Honestly, and it don't have to be out big. Just something that my mind has formed a relationship with. And as long as I've got that, I can deal with most everything else. And that was what the music was for me, really. Well, don't get me wrong, Christ, it was my life. Do you know what I mean? Of course it was. Go on, what was I saying now? This happens to me a lot, and you probably noticed this. Things go completely out of my head. And it's not to do with parsley. Before you sat there thinking, oh, parsley. It's not to do with that. It's ADHD, I forget. But I have so many thoughts that go through and they drag me off in different directions. And if I don't grab them in time, they're gone. And then I stand here sounding, you know, not making any sense and being frustrated. Right. Oh, there's flies, honestly. Anyway, weathering it's so hot brings out flies out, they do my head in. Another pet hating man. So we're talking about transit. Oh yeah, I mean, come on. God, it was really difficult. It was so difficult and so traumatic that, well, I was going to say I hid from it, but you couldn't hide from it because it ended. It wasn't around to hide from, if you know what I mean. But anyway, I'll keep talking about that. So we moved past that. And so a big thing that happened in my life. Well, I mean, at the time the band ended, my girlfriend, who's still my girlfriend now, Alison, she was obviously what got me through days, do you know what I mean? Because, you know, I felt pretty low, do you know what I mean? And I'm not going to make this video all wallowy, and I'm not going to get upset about it because I'm feeling a lot better about things. But yeah, she had to work really hard, because it's not fun being around someone like me in a situation like that, because it's, you know, it's very powerful. It's my emotions, and they fill a room. It's not like I can hide them. It's not like I can sit in the corner and be silent, even if I'm silent, if I'm sat there in right mood. It don't matter if I'm not saying no. So she was also brilliant, and you know, she was equally brilliant, because she didn't really put any pressure on me to do anything. She was more than happy for me to try and, I don't know, find what I was going to do, I guess. And she was more than happy to sort of be there while that happened, and it's still happening, isn't it? Still happening, I guess. Right, so a really big thing that happened in my life after the band split up was my best friend, David Cobble, Deg. Some of you know him, but he had a baby. Oh, and I tell you what, I was absolutely devastated. It's one of the biggest changes that ever happened in my life with that, because obviously I had Alison, and I'll talk about Deg in a separate video, but I met Deg when I was 18, and Deg's been very much like a rock for me, as well as like Alison had. So, and I spent a lot of time with Deg, you know, constantly be like, I want to spend time around him, because I just enjoyed him, and I enjoyed how he made me feel about me. So anyway, his girlfriend Tasha got pregnant, and now we're devastated. I mean, I'm happy for him, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I was like, oh my God, this is going to change my life. It's going to change my coping mechanisms. Because Theyve, you know, has always been part of my coping mechanisms. I'm not saying off. I suppose that sort of is it's a bit reductive, really. But obviously, my best friend. I've probably got 3 best friends, but Deg definitely is, you know, my best friend. One of these 3 best friends, but I've certainly known him the longest. But anyway, so it was terrifying for me, because obviously I thought, well, what's going to happen when this baby comes, in terms of me and Deg and us spending time together, and how we'd been spending time together, because it's what me and Deg used to do. We just talk all the time, and we still do, about stuff that's bothering him, that's bothering me. So he had this baby anyway, a little baby girl called Amelia, and as I say, it was a really difficult time for me anyway. In my own head, it was still a massive storm all the time. So I can't remember exactly how it coincided, what it coincided with in terms of what I was doing, but I didn't go around to Deg's for quite a while after that, because I felt I didn't want to intrude. Do you know what I mean? They've got this new baby, and I didn't want to intrude in their life. Do you know what I mean? And then some other things happened, and as I say, when things happen to me, Deg's usually the first person that I go to. So I went round anyway, and met Amelia, and I'm not going to get upset talking about this. I don't want to be upset in a good way, though. I mean, God, you know. And so that changed my life. I mean, maybe not the first time, actually. It was weird the first time. He plunked her on my knee, and she looked at me, and she just screamed, and I was just like, oh, God. I mean, baby's crying. I'm sure it's the same for everyone, but for me, it's one of my biggest triggers, I think, baby's crying. So I was like, oh. But then I think it was a couple of days later, I got really upset about something, like really, really badly upset, and I went down, and he just gave it to me. And I remember, I just remember bonding with her instantly, scarily so. That changed my life that day, because, let's see if I can do this. That changed my life because, well, I suddenly felt a part of something. Do you know what I mean? And even though she's not my blood, it's nothing to do with me, really, other than obviously Deg's my best friend. But it gave me a sense of purpose. Did she become the sort of object of my hyper focus? I think that's too. That don't do enough justice, really. I think my relationship with Amelia went well beyond hyper focus. because hyperfocus is, for me anyways, purely coping or giving into your, indulging your impulses. Whereas it was a much more, look, I haven't got children and I don't really have those instincts necessarily. That might sound very weird to some people, but I've never once thought about it as something that I need to be doing or want to be doing. So I've never really... It was just amazing to meet this little girl who instantly seemed to warm to me, and I think that was huge for me, because look, around that time, as I say, I want a lot of fun to be around, and it kind of got to the point where when I went into a room, it was a bit like, oh, okay, right, it's going to be like that, that's it. So I began to notice that as well, you know, when you come in and you can read people's body languages, like I say, and you know that they don't really want you there. Or it's not that they don't want you there, it's more that, well, it's like a storm blowing in. It's like a storm blows through, you know what I mean? And no one really likes a storm, do they, I suppose, unless it's been really hot for a long time, but you know what I'm saying? So suddenly, there was this little girl, this tiny little baby, who, and I can't remember how old she was when I really sort of bonded with her. It should have been quite a few months. But suddenly there's this little girl and her eyes light up when she sees me. Do you know what I mean? And that was just amazing. Do you know what I mean? Amazing. And I'm sure when it's your own child, I'm sure that's even more amazing. But what if, you know, that is what it is. But it changed my life, that. Changed my life, and it probably rescued me at my lowest point because, and right, so that's the point anyways. So then I'd go around as much as Theyve would let me, really. Because again, I didn't want to intrude. The last thing I wanted to do, and I felt very sensitive about Tasha as well, because I didn't want Tasha to think I was trying to intrude him, but I was drawn to Amelia. And I had to spend time with her. I had to. And I absolutely loved it, and I still love it now. So I go around 4 times a week sometimes, and like I say, I'd always ask and make sure it were all right. And I think Theyve liked it as well. Well, because I mean, any parent must love seeing someone else bond with a child, I suppose. But as much as anything, Dave's life was changing having kids. I've got a lot of friends called Theyve, it gets confusing. Dave's life was changing having kids, and I think, you know, I took a lot of strain off him because I would be there in an instant to help him with anything, because I'd have done anything to spend time with her. And I'm still very appreciative to Theyve and Tasha really for letting me spend time with their child. And then obviously Tasha got pregnant again, and I was just over the moon at that point. It sounds ridiculous, do you know what I mean? It's not nothing to do with me, but I was absolutely over the moon that she was pregnant again, because I mean the joy that I was having with Amelia, even when she was so young, and you know she needed help with everything, and I'd be carrying her around, showing stuff and talking to her. I talked to that girl like an adult from 6 months old. You know what I mean? I never talked down to her like a baby. I'd always sort of have conversations with her, and she was just magic. She still is. She's absolutely. It changed my perspective on life, everything, as I'm sure it does for. And I guess I'm sure there's a lot of like genuine parents out there who, I don't know, may find what I'm saying a bit weird. I don't know, but then Brolin was born, like I said, and that was equally as magic. I remember when Brolin was born, I think it was the night she was brought home from the hospital, I effectively demanded to hold her for like 2 hours. Well, they let me hold her, and she just fell asleep. And I had her in my arms, and I've still got the video on my phone, I think, of her fast asleep. But I had her in my arms, stood in the other room, and she was just asleep, and I just loved it. And I think I stood with her for about an hour and a half or 2 hours while she slept. I think I got her into a rocking motion, and she just loved it, and she was asleep, and again, that I held her for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and that enabled Theyve and Tash, you know, Tash who'd literally just given birth, bless her, and Theyve to, you know, have 2 hours sorting themselves out. So I think, well, I like to think that they appreciate it in that sense. But I always felt that I was intruding. It was, you know, because it's not my family, although it feels like it. It feels like they're part of I feel like I'm part of their family anyway. And that's been really hard, jumping forward, you know, with lockdown, because I haven't seen them really properly, since lockdown started. I've seen them a bit, and it's been magic. But before that, you know, literally since those girls were born, how old's Amelia now? Is she 7 turning 8, or has she gone 8? I'm sorry, I'm terrible with everyone's ages. I don't know my parents' ages. I don't know my brother's ages. I only know mine because I'm me, and I don't know anyone's birthdays. I'm terrible. But anyway, you know, so for the last 8 years, 7 years, whatever it is, that's not, you know what I'm saying. I've spent a lot of time with them, and I've absolutely loved it. And the bond that I have with them is, do you know what I mean? It saved me in that time. I suppose it still saves me now, because it still gives me a purpose, and I still get off on walking in there and seeing their eyes light up. That never gets old. I'm sure it don't for you know. Again, I feel weird talking about this stuff, because I'm sure there's people who are like, well, I've got, you know what I'm trying to say anyway. It never gets old seeing that look on the face when you go in there, and they're overjoyed to see you. That's mega, that. You know, it's one of the best things ever, isn't it, I guess. And I'm sure, again, if it's your own kids, it's even better, I'm sure. But I don't see how it can be. It's like the way I love them, I don't see how I can love my own children more. I don't know. I feel weird talking about this stuff anyway. But this is where I've been and what have I been doing, and they have played a massive part in the last 10 years of my life. They've given me an enormous sense of purpose. They've taught me more than, well, it's difficult to quantify really, but they've taught me so much about life, about me, about lots of things they've taught me about. And I don't know, like I say, it just always feels like somewhere where people want to see me. And don't get, you know, like, it's not, I've changed so much as a person over the last 10 years that I'm not, well, I suppose at the wrong point, I'm difficult to be around. But for the most part, I'm not difficult to be around anymore. So it's not like people recoil when I walk into a room. I apologise if I'm sweating, because it is boiling in here. It is absolutely boiling. So yeah, but obviously, and that was weird, you know, as well, because, you know, so obviously we came out of the band with a bit of money, and I had you know, a lot of support and stuff, so I didn't really have to worry too much. But it got to the point where I was thinking, right, well, I need to do something else. I tried to do music. I fell out of love with music. Again, a conversation for another day. But I thought I need to do something else. But I thought, but whatever that something else is, it can't get in the way of me spending time with Brolin and Amelia, which had kind of become the focus of my life to a degree. You know, it was, I don't know, spending time with them at that point, it was just magic. It still is magic, but you know, back then when I was going through that and suddenly discovered that love, you know what I mean? Because don't get me wrong, I wasn't lacking love, obviously, but I don't know, it's very hard to explain. I'll just leave it as, you know, that my relationship with them saved me to a degree. And Theyve. You know, Theyve's always been here for me, and I'd like to think that I'd always be there for him as well. I'd like to think that I've always been there for him. This video is about 30 minutes in it. I was going to talk about a lot more. Shall I leave it there for this one? I mean, there's a lot more to talk about regarding this, but it is half an hour, and I don't like overfacing people's videos, and I am getting sweaty, unfortunately. So yeah, all right. Well, I think, yeah, I'm gonna leave that there. I don't always watch these back before I publish them. I just put them out. I know if I said something bad. I don't think I said anything bad. That's why I talk so slow. I'm always filtering myself. Yeah, okay.
So what's that been about? That's been about transitioning, coming out of the band and trying to find a foothold somewhere. And it's been 30 minutes, a lot more to say, but with a lot more to say, this would go to an hour and I'm too hot. So, okay, so I'll leave that one there. Okay, thanks for watching again, as always. Yeah, nice one, thank you.